Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. I should also mention my father studied here at Berkeley in the early 60s, so the crew cut sort of generation, I guess. But I'm happy to be here, and what I will bring is sort of a grassroots perspective, because I understand there's a lot of knowledge on the technological level here in Berkeley. So my experience is really on the practical aspects that I have seen through my 8 years with CARE International, and also what I've seen in the slums of Nairobi. So I'll try to explain something about that. Yeah, I'll show briefly what I will talk about. First, as I said, the major some challenges based on personal experience. And I'm seeing some new opportunities. I mean, the challenges are there, but there are also opportunities, especially in the biodiesel, but also in the high-tech industry for more an urban setting. Then I'm just going to go into this Jatropha plant, because it is a very interesting and promising plant. Some of you may have heard of it, but it has you can make diesel out of it, so it has potential as a diesel plant. And then I'm going to move into explaining a bit about Kibera slums in Nairobi, and what fails in Kibera, that's specifically going down to the Kibera, and what survives there, and some opportunities there as well, thinking about high-tech. Then I'm going to just give an example of the group I'm working with, Kibera Youth Self-Help Group, that I worked with for 2003 as a patron, as a volunteer. I come and go, but they have taught me a lot, and I would like to share some of those things, because they have done some interesting things on their own. And then I'll just give some threats to groups like Kibera, even though they have achieved, they're always under threat. And then something about CITRIS and the role maybe CITRIS could play, as I see it. So I'll start with the why development projects in Africa fail. They're basically designed from outsiders without much input from the beneficiaries, and that's because of time often and pressure to spend quickly and design programs quickly. So it's that aspect. And when you come to a community, what often happens is that the community has seen so many failures, so they expect another failure, and that creates a bad precedent for anybody coming in, and it's extremely difficult to change that environment and understanding. In addition, because of the time pressure often in projects and the donor requirements, they will have to do things a bit fast and sometimes dish out to get result, meaning they'll have to, for example, call people by giving them a per diem to come to a meeting which is supposed to be in their interest, and it sets the precedence, and for giving out free things, for example, lunches or T-shirts or whatever it is. But it becomes, it undermines other interventions because of the understanding that NGOs are here to give something for free. So another key reason is that those who pay for aid, if you as a customer buy a car, for example, you have an issue with the car, the company is really worried about it, and you can take them to court, you can do anything. Obviously, if you support as a private individual a project, or the donor supports a project, the distance between whoever supports that project and the person receiving it in the community, or for example in Africa, it's so far. And let's say the customer, the person in the community, has no or very limited means of complaining if there is something wrong. He'll be just, he has no channel for complaining about the project which has gone in the wrong direction. So that is a major challenge. And of course, those who pay for the projects, for them a key element is actually that the requirements on the bureaucratic level is met. It's a bigger issue than if the impact is limited. Yeah, and there's no system of feedback. There's no way, there's no official way. They have tried with something they call ombudsman in humanitarian catastrophes. After the Rwanda crisis in 95, 94, they tried, but it hasn't really materialized much. So there's very limited channels for complaining about the project which is failing and where money is wasted. Other reasons, of course, like the normal reasons we hear about all the time, the conflict issues, illnesses like TB and AIDS, and pure desperation. I mean, many times I interact with people and they can even see themselves that the benefit for them in a week's time will be quite big. But because of that understanding of having to get something right now for the family or for themselves, they are not able or willing to think ahead that 1 week. In addition, political interference is very common. The last assignment I had was in a very isolated place on the border of Somalia, and the politicians were extremely engaged in talking to the community and directing us of what to do based on, and promoting themselves, saying that they were providing the services to the community while it was the NGO. But that had really disturbed the program, and it undermined the results, because the politicians really didn't look out for the people in that case, but just their own interest. So then of course the cultural aspect, the level of especially the urban rural differences, and also, as I said, for example, my last assignment in the Somali community, where there's a lot of conflict and a history of communicating through conflict in a way, understanding that culture, it takes time and it's not often possible with the current way NGOs implement their programs. You can just ask questions during the presentation if you have any, please. I mean, I don't know if it's clear or if there are questions, but I'm happy to receive those. So what I have seen, there are some success stories. I mean, I'm giving a bleak picture here, but really there are some success stories, and technology could be one. That's not really an NGO intervention, but just it's interesting, as you're probably aware, mobile phones has grown at an incredible pace in Africa. And you see, even in every social sort of layer, you find people having mobile phones and using them. Probably more having them than using them, because of the cost of calling. I mean, it's probably as expensive to call in Africa as it is in Europe, or probably North America too. So, and the interesting thing is with technology, sometimes it works even in countries that don't work. In Somalia, there are 3 well-functioning mobile networks that are competing and providing better service than in neighboring countries with democracy. So sometimes technology works in unexpected ways, as the case is in Somalia. And coming back to Kenya, it's interesting to see that so few. Firstly, how it has expanded, and 10% use mobile phones and have mobile phones. But what's interesting also is that or a very small percentage, maybe 5% of the people who access and use mobile phones actually ever had a landline or used a landline, maybe in some cases. So they have jumped straight from nothing, basically, to mobile phones without it having any disadvantages, it seems. It doesn't seem, to me at least, it doesn't seem that they are they are using the mobile phones differently than I see in Europe or North America. So it seems they are understanding technology as well as anybody. What I'm also seeing is that in urban areas in Africa, things are changing extremely quickly, and I'll talk about the slums in a minute. But what is now slums will probably grow to become middle class, some of them at least, in the near future. So we are seeing that in a way, people from a city in Europe or North America may have more in common with a person in Nairobi than a person in Nairobi would have with rural people in their own country. So you have that dynamic, which is quite interesting, that urban centers tend to think about the same thing, and even fashions and brands that are popular, they tend to catch across very quickly, at least in the case of Kenya and Nairobi that I know of, but I've seen that elsewhere in Africa too. So what you see at least is that in the urban areas, they have access to technology, they use it, and also they change rapidly. I mean, there's mobilization. What the biggest success I saw in my time, 8 years, was a savings and loan program from Niger, from '91 originally. It is the simplest form of savings and loan, and I think the reason it worked was because firstly it's very cheap. It's around $20 per beneficiary, which is in NGO sort of terms a very cheap ratio per beneficiary. But why it worked? Because they make all the decisions themselves in the group, and they're ladies basically. They decide the interest rate, they decide how often they would meet, how much they would pay each week or month. They decide who will get the loans from within the group. So everything is basically decided within the group, and they decide the leadership in the group and the treasurer and everything. And there's probably 10 to 20 to 30, depends on the setting. But especially with women, it has worked. In Niger now, it's around 160,000 members of such groups, and in addition 160 have made the such group without any NGO intervention, and that's like a sign of true success when people duplicate without any incentive, if you can say it like that. That's quite unique. So it's gone now. Of course, it's duplicated also elsewhere in Africa. So I think about 500,000. And the interesting thing about that project, how it started actually with somebody who actually came from Norway, but the key thing was that the person had time and some unrestricted money, meaning some money which was not tied down to a specific project. So the person had time, and more importantly, the person was not an expert. So the person was listening a lot to what was going on and picked up things. And the person was a lady. I don't know if that matters too, but anyhow, it was a humbleness in the approach which created something remarkable to me, and wherever I've seen it work. So, especially in rural areas, I must say, because the disadvantage, of course, with the savings and loan scheme is that the money you save is rather limited. So you won't be able to take any major investments. But at least what they have realized is that type of projects, as a community mobilizer, it leaves the financial aspect, but as a community mobilizer, it has huge impacts in terms of getting the voice of the women in this case, but also just uniting and discussing issues and all of the social aspects. So it's called MMD, But generally, of course, microfinance seems to have been one of the few success stories in the recent years of aid. So more opportunities. Yeah, we talked about modern technology, how it's revolutionizing. Even they are using, as you probably know, for bank information and for market information, sharing market information, using a mobile phone in South Africa and in Bangladesh. Actually, I'm a Norwegian, and I know there's been a bit of a case with the Grameen phone. You know, Grameen Bank had a phone that was meant as it was a Telenor, the Norwegian telecom company, did it as a sort of a, what should I say, a humanitarian gesture. But now they have realized this is extremely profitable, because you can imagine the market in Bangladesh is enormous, and it's millions of dollars. So suddenly, apparently, Telenor went back on their word, and there has been interesting discussions on that. So it tells you something. You know, something you do something, it's a good gesture, and then when it becomes very valuable, suddenly the things changes. And while Yunus received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, he had a meeting with Telenor on this particular issue, trying to, make. They're actually trying to make the money come back to Bangladesh, which was the idea of the Grameen phone. The other opportunity really is that I see. I mean, Africa is rich on resources. No, it's huge land, and it has potential probably in the biofuel. Because there's many reasons, but what's the beauty of it is probably that combination of reforestation, because this is a tree we're talking about, and reducing poverty, obviously, giving people an income, and it can be grown on areas where you cannot grow anything else, and it's not a food crop. This is the Jatropha tree, which is not edible. So you have a potential here, as I see it, for creating a viable income for East Africans, or Africans in general, and that's nice to see, because it's not that often you see that. So Energy Africa, as I mentioned, I'm involved in, has the vision to make East Africa fuel self-sufficient through biofuel production. We're starting in a small way with 350 plants, and the idea is to use outgrowers. So it's not about owning plantations. You know, that changes the dynamics, and it's better always to probably to keep the farmers on their land, to keep that connection and that feeling for the farmers of belonging and having ownership of their plants and being part of the project in that way, as opposed to working on a factory. Yes, sir. Jatropha. I'll go through it a lot in the next slide, but it's a special tree that you can make diesel out of. Yeah, but I know it's not a famous tree yet, but I'm going to give you a real. Here actually comes right here, so it's a good point. So it's you probably can read this, but I just want to say that it's used, as you can see, it's always been in Africa. It's used as fencing and on graves, because when people historically they lost somebody on a trip, and finding that body again, of course, was very difficult. I mean, if you made something of wood, it wouldn't last long. So this tree this is not edible. They have livestock, doesn't need feed on it. They would plant a tree so that when they came back, they would approximately find the grave of the deceased. But also, of course, fencing and erosion control, because it grows very quickly, and this is not edible again. It's good for fencing of livestock, for example, and more affordable than modern materials. So it does not compete with food crops, as it's not edible, as I said. And it may be pressed on a farm level. I mean, you may press it yourself. The seed has a high germination rate. It produces after a couple of years, but 4 or 5 years is when you get a proper crop out of it. But then it stays for 40 years, and it doesn't require much. I mean, you basically prune it a bit, and you leave it. You can make things out of the whole plant. I mean, at least many, like the fruit and the seed inside, you can make things, but also the roots have some medicinal. Sir, does this answer your question more or less? Yeah. So you see, it has a lot of advantages. And it's not, I mean, that was a big thing in the area I'm working, Shimba Hills on the coast of Mombasa. The monkeys, they come and grab everything you plant, and they disturb a lot in that area. So they didn't like this one because it's not edible. And yeah, they didn't find much of an interest. And the same with elephants, actually. Elephants don't care about this one. They'll take other trees and break them down, but this Jatropha, they stay away. And elephants in this area is next to a national reserve, so elephants are a bit of an issue. Yes. So here it is. Yeah, the tree. This is the tree, but this is a bit of a big. We would encourage them to be pruning and cutting them to not be as big, to be able to handpick the fruit, which contain the seed where you make the diesel. So this is the tree, and yeah, it grows in very arid areas. It grows in deserts, actually. In Mali, they use it a lot for desert control. So of course, it won't give the same amount of oil, but it still has some oil, and then erosion control is important as well. So yeah, in Mali, as I said, 0.5 kilo per year. Other years up to 5 kilo. Seed, it's only about 15 to 35% oil. So I mean, it's not like you will get a huge amount of oil from one tree. I mean, it's just, let's talk about 1 liter per year. But well, you have to refine it then. So well, that's the liter probably. It won't lose much after that. Yeah, 1 liter of diesel after refining, or raw oil. I mean, it's not much. As far as I know, there's not much of a change there. But around approximately. But it can also use as a paraffin. You can unrefine it. You can put it in the engine, and with a mix of diesel, I mean 10-20% probably. And you can modify the engines. The issue is with the engines is that it needs a higher temperature than others. It's thicker than normal diesel, so it needs higher temperature. But it has a lot of potential. Of course, with all these new things, there's a lot of hope and dreams, but it also has issues, of course. And probably it needs to have a large scale to be economically viable. It's not really a priority for the government. Yes, sir.
I assume the manually harvested. How many man hours do you have?
Yeah, it's about 50 kilos per day. In Nicaragua, apparently they do 100 kilos, I hear, but I haven't. 50 kilos is more probably realistic. 50 kilos a day. Labor is, of course, pretty cheap there.
Does that translate to in terms of liters?
Yeah, that would be per 5 liters. 5 kilos would give 1 liter. So that's a day would maybe be between 10 and 20 liters, maybe. Yeah, something like that. So it's not like, yeah, it requires a bit of work, but you can use as a paraffin substitute. You can use it for heating and for light, so it has that advantage as well. You have to modify the paraffin lamps a bit, but slightly. So, and as you see, you have to do refining is a bit more complicated. Refinery costs a bit of money on this one, maybe $500,000 or something, but you can use it for a lot without the refining as well. So, as I said, the large scale needed for economic viability. It's not really a priority for the governments of East Africa yet. So there's no legal. We don't know. We are producing a lot. We don't know what the government is going to say. Are they going to tax us for this? Are they going to say, this is illegal? This is supposed to, It's anyhow, you never know. That's Africa in a way. Refinery technology needs improvement. Now, currently, it's quite expensive and not. If we had a mobile refinery, it would also make a lot of sense. You could move out to closer to the farms. And actually do it and give it back directly probably to the farmers. That would be the optimal. Currently, on the small scale, that is probably not economically viable to do it on the farm level, where people crush it or press it on the farm. But with a mobile refinery, it could be possible. And apparently, as I said, it's like 1 liter per tree, more or less, 5 kilos of seeds, which is not. So if you can have a plant which can have, twice or 3 times as much, then you really talk about a huge, huge potential. So here, what it looks like, it's like it starts. It's first yellow. No, first it's green, sorry. Then it's yellow, and then it turns black, and that's when it's ready to be harvested. Inside here, there are 3. This is the size of a marble, something like that, or a golf ball or something. Inside here, there are 3 big seeds. And those are the ones you press, actually. This fruit or fruit cake can be used for fertilizer and fuel as well, and several things. But the real valuable for the oil is the seeds inside. You harvest them when they're black, and then you dry them for 4 or 5 days, and then they can be pressed. And you can harvest them a couple of times a year. If it's really good, 3 times maybe. But that's the advantage again. It's not like other biofuels, like raps or soya, where you have to plant every year. So it doesn't require much in terms of fertilizer or anything else either. So that's some of the advantages in an African context, where access to
Sounds pretty similar to coffee harvesting.
Well, coffee is also, but you have to plant it. It has. Yeah, maybe actually. It's a good.
You have to get the fruit off, get the seed,
Yeah.
wash it.
Yeah, it could have some similarities. The plant here is sort of. Normally, it will grow a bit bigger than the coffee tree, I think. But I'm not sure. Yeah, it has similarities. Well, they tried it in many. I haven't seen Rwanda, but in Uganda, Tanzania, I've seen it. In Zimbabwe, it's big. In Mali, as I said, it's coming up most African countries. I mean, Latin America and India is bigger on this and has gone a bit further. But yeah, Rwanda would be a perfect country because of its issues with erosion, and secondly, its fertility. So it could be really, really good for Rwanda. But more like, more probably also as fencing, because as fencing, So I'm jumping to the Kibera now, where my heart is at times, at least. It's a major slum. Some of you have heard of it because it's sort of one of the most. It's like Maasai, the most famous tribe in the world. So Kibera is one of the large famous slums. 1 million people in a small area. Rapid urbanization, as you can see. Expect 55% of Africans living in urban areas, and basically they don't have much ownership of that land. But they do have a lot of information about what's going on outside. They do have televisions. They do follow trends, as I mentioned in the beginning, which is interesting. This is an example, just showing you. You see the structures here. Maybe I have one of these things. Maybe I should use it. These are made of. As you see, the walls are iron sheeting, and this is just mud walls, basically, with these sticks going across. So it's very basic, and they're just paying like $10, $15 per month, but they don't own the house, and the guy who owns the house doesn't live there normally, and he doesn't own the land either. So it's a bit of an issue there. So this is some of the issues. You see this is open trenches, and you see the garbage, and you see the setting here. You see also the contrast by coming up with these bends, and and you have this type of environment, which is also typical, I guess, for Nairobi. The contrast between the rich and the poor, and again the garbage issue. So the Kibera issue. I mean, to sum it up, people feel they have no future, so they do stupid things, and sometimes they get killed for it. Mob justice is coming, and I myself have had friends killed trying to steal things. So it's not uncommon, and of course HIV, prostitution, those things common. Basically because youth don't feel they have an opportunity anyhow. They don't have the contacts to get a job, even if they have the education. They don't feel that life has much to offer them really. So that's part of the problems. Here's another overview of here you see the different structures. And you see behind here, things are coming up, things are changing. So you have permanent structures coming up around. Because this is very close, 10 minutes from the center of the town. So it's a very good location in many ways.
The permanent structures, they purchased land that they have.
Yeah, that would be mainly the case, yeah. Because that investment would be so high. This investment for these shacks is so limited compared to the permanent structures. So. Opportunities, there's creativity. There's excellent ability to adopt new technology. I mentioned mobile phones and computers before. And there's flexible youth. And there's decent level of education. There's free primary education in Kenya, and also a lot of people have secondary education. Another overview, so you get to see a bit of the colors. There's plenty of colors. But they live, you see the roads are very, what is it called, crammed, there's not much space. So I talk about one example, the one I'm a patron of, and they started by themselves. They are engaged in both social and activities, social and business. They do garbage collection. So they made a living out of removing garbage out of people's houses and in the streets, and they're making organic manure and selling the plastics and metals. So they're recycling, but doing it as a business. So, and they didn't do that nobody asked them to do it. They just saw the business opportunity, and that's the key, I think. That they just started on their own without starting because somebody indicated that it would be a good idea for them to start, and maybe they would get some money. Soccer teams, and theater groups. So that's typical for, I guess, African groups. They have that both elements of business and social activities. They go hand in hand. And solidarity. I mean, they look after the orphans and vulnerable children just on a sort of mentoring on a volunteer basis. So they do things like that, which is quite impressive considering the stress they have in their daily lives. Around 20 employees and fixed members. And this is from 2001. And the guys who started it basically were just drug dealers and dealing in illegal brew and stuff like that. So they went pretty far. This is the office. You see, and they do car washing from here, carpet cleaning. This is the office. They have 3 computers inside now, and water and electricity. This is the collection center where they buy plastics. They just buy it from people who sort of get employment by going around and they get to collecting the plastics, some types of plastic that can be sold. And here you see, this is the outskirts, so it's pretty green outside actually. But I wouldn't walk there at night. So, why is Kibera Youth a success? Well, there's a risk every time, but after 11, it's not very safe. This slum is very safe in a way that mob justice is there. So, if there's an outsider, they may. I mean, if you are an insider, they would be very cautious about attacking you. If you're a complete outsider, maybe they wouldn't mind. But that mob justice creates some stability. But at night, guns come up and things, and in the bushes where most of the criminals hide their loot and whatever. So that's just outside. That's particularly bad. And they live there, some of the criminals. So why is Kibera Youth a success? Well, it was not founded to obtain funds, which is a big difference to most groups in Africa that I have come across, at least through my time. It's popular, well known in the community, and provides good services. Not many external influences in what they're supposed to do, and they reward workers. Initially, they paid everybody the same. Now they do differentiate and pay people who work harder more, which probably is a good idea. And there's a mixed ethnic group and gender composition in the group. This is how they collect the garbage every day, and then they sort it. They have organic behind here. You can't see it, but they have organic. They make organic manure, and sort the plastic and scrap metals. So they sell that, and the rest is normally picked by the city council, but that's off and on if they come. But this is the handcarts they use. So threats to Kibera youth and similar groups. It's basically, we had a lot of these threats happening, but they didn't take the group down. But leadership, of course, especially around elections, the worst comes out around elections, actually, in a Kenyan setting often, where people sometimes, they not necessarily the best guys promote themselves as sort of for leadership positions. So it's a bit, and often people pay them. Even on 11, we have the elections here, 20 members, 60 members, 20 employees, 60 members, and still in leadership elections, people are paying something at times at that level, even maybe just $50 or something. But it's a challenge. So conflict between the social and business side is there. Lack of competence and focus is a challenge, and discipline. This is the football team at the training. So they are youth teams and trying to bring. This is basically orphans mainly, and then the older team. So just before I close this technology, I mean, what I've seen through the Kibera experience is how much they have adapted the computers there and using them to have a client database. I mean, these things they do without any external sort of support. And they also made their own website called KiberaNet, which they created themselves. They got some advice on that one, but they at least created it. They mainly have email accounts and keep in touch with friends in other parts of the world. So some cyber cafes are starting to come up in Kibera. Not many, but at least one I've seen. And they are capable and interested in using technology. And we were thinking about a wireless. That the key for using technology and to transform Africa. I mean, how I feel that technology. I mean, the community ownership and collaboration from the start. Local gatekeepers like Kibera Youth or Energy Africa or others that have been there and have trust in the community. It's easier to use them than to create new groups, sort of, obviously. But even if the groups are focused on something else, they may be still more able to work with a new technology, for example. And the initial stage will take some time, but then be patient with that one. But when it comes, my experience is that, especially with technology, you can roll it out really pretty quickly when you start. When you start. So. Like huge and ready markets, like internet, mobile phones, and biodiesel probably are good areas. And it should not compete with other initiatives. Like if you were to put up a wireless, for example, in Kibera, then you would collaborate and with for example, the cyber cafes already there. So must consider the social, environmental, and economic aspect and make sure no conflict exists, so that balance is there. Possible. So I think CITRIS could get involved. Africa has a huge potential. It's coming up, and the rest of the world will benefit from a strong Africa, really, and Africa which is unpolluted and unspoiled. What CITRIS, of course, has is a lot of technical high tech. For example, in a Kibera setting, it could link a lot of institutions together that were dealing with the community, and that would create the information within, but also link to outside. And CITRIS with varieties, to get a good variety, to improve oil expellers, to have mobile Jatropha oil refiners could be very interesting, and to have engines that can run directly on Jatropha oil without being refined would be something which would be very valuable. So I think that's it. So thank you.
On the wireless in Kenya, my belief is that 2.4 is still licensed, which makes it quite difficult to just deploy it in the slum. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, but all I can say is that it's rapidly changing when it comes to the government's way of approaching technology. But I don't have a solution to that yet, no.
Do you think the government's approachable on this topic? Or movable?
Well, yeah, at least I've heard from other experiences that it is possible to work with them on technology. I really don't have an answer on it. It's unpredictable with the government, but the hope is that we can influence the government for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Hi. You mentioned that 10% of people have cell phones but don't often use them. So I have two questions about making that hardware more usable. One is, when I was in Venezuela, I saw that cell phones there, some of them had analog radios in them. I was wondering if there's a similar situation in Africa. And the other is, I'm assuming it's GSM technology there. And would a model like a micro telephone company, is that something that's viable where groups could get together, buy bulk minutes from providers, and then kind of locally resell them, repackage them?
Yeah, I mean, for the first question, I mean, the transistor radio is extremely cheap and common, so I haven't seen much of that used like that. Well, can you repeat the second question, please?
The second question was, is a miniature phone company a viable option? I mean, is the technology and the community reconfigurable such that a group of people could buy bulk minutes from a provider and sell them for less? I mean, get a better rate by buying them bulk and then resell them.
That is a common business already and very popular, and probably has a lot of potential. So I see that as something that's happening in the Kibera, especially actually. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go on, Slums. I think you went first. I think you just made it.
I'm not sure that I understand the utility of wireless networking over, say, mobile phone networking, where mobile phones are already much more prevalent, there's a much stronger infrastructure, and even a $100 laptop is quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Surely it would be easy to roll out a networking model through mobile phones.
Yeah, but you mean, but connecting through the mobile phones, the charging, calling on the phone, using the wireless, or using the internet, you say?
Just as an infrastructure issue, to put wireless into a million people's homes in the slum would be probably much more difficult than to use mobile phones.
Yeah, but I think the main issue is that the cost of calling is extremely high in Kenya. So it would be extremely expensive. I mean, it's more expensive to call in Kenya than in Norway, and Norway is the most expensive country on most things in the world.
But then that would conflict with another one of your points that you should not, that if you bring in a new initiative, it should not conflict with existing initiatives, where if you bring in wireless networking for everyone, you immediately get something like Skype, where people are using their network to call, and the mobile phone companies are then going to be very unhappy, and you're going to get a conflict in that way.
Yeah, I think whatever we do there in Kibera will have some conflicts, but I'm just saying that if, as I mentioned with the cyber, the one I know of, if you involve people like that, and possibly people in the phone, dealing with phones, renting out phones for international calls already, there should be a possibility of working together with them so that there will be mutual benefit. But I mean, the conflict there will be, and to tell the truth, I'm not even sure of all the consequences of bringing in wireless, but I just think it would be very exciting to see, because with all that creativity, I see that they would use it in new and different ways, and that is fascinating, I think.
I believe you mentioned that a small group of farmers have already started planting Jatropha. I wonder if you could comment on the success of that for them in terms of being economically self-sustaining.
Yeah, basically, generally it's been unsuccessful in terms of small-scale farming trying to produce and expel on a local level. Even with some subsidies from NGOs who are encouraging it, it's been unsuccessful. I mean, that's the danger of bringing a new thing that has a lot of expectations. Farmers start it, but it's not really the people taking the risk. It's not somebody pushing it like an NGO, but it's really the farmer themselves, and it's probably not been sustainable. The thing that's most sustainable from Tanzania, where they have come further than the neighboring countries is soap, actually making soap out of Jatropha, which is another use. But on a small scale, on the farm level, where you grow 1 acre, 2 acre, or a hectare, at this level, it's not viable at all, actually, probably. And therefore, of course, we have to be cautious about encouraging it. But on the other hand, we have to also start and try to do something. And this seems to be a better option than many other options. So to answer your question, yeah, it hasn't been very viable where it has been done on a small scale, but partly because the plant has not yielded a lot of fruit. It's still in the infant stage. The refinery capacity has not been around, and the expelling technology has not been good. So there's a variety of reasons, but yeah, in short, it's not not so viable.
And for our last question, I believe.
I was just wondering, you might have covered this. What type of device would you envision people using to connect to wireless internet? Would it be the $100 laptop or a mobile phone that's wireless Wi-Fi enabled? Or
yeah, I mean, I know they have this idea of cheaper laptops. I'm not a technology person myself, but there is, even from Europe and my country, there is a lot of decent computer equipment that is not being utilized at all. So of course, one aspect is just a second-hand computer that still is able to connect. That I would think would be the biggest. And as I said, they are already, you can import for free. Like Kenya has done it for free. There's no taxation on import of second-hand computer equipment. So actually, the price is somehow affordable, even in a slum setting. And they could share, of course, many. Yeah.
Very good. Oh, yes, please, Carlo, please go ahead. Oh, hang on. Let me give you the microphone.
So the concept would be to have cyber cafe kind of facilities rather than have individuals or in the computers or.
Yeah, I mean, a cyber cafe would be like a training ground and a point of sort of center for the technology, probably, and a meeting point for the technology. But then it would expand further. But maybe the initial stage would be a resource center that is connected, and people train, and then you just maybe do the wireless close in that proximity and test, and then you expand it on a larger level. I mean, that would probably be the most viable model, because the trailing element and yeah.
Very good. Last closing question, anybody? Or with that, there's some really nice refreshments at the back there, and I'm sure a few people would like to stay and talk to Eric. So with that, let's make a closing round of applause. Thank you.